Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's Charlie Bengel Jr., CEO of Remax Allegiance, and welcome to another edition of the Allegiance Way Show and the Daily Dose. My co-host, as usual, is coaching extraordinaire Amy Lassen. Amy, welcome back to the show. Good to see you.
Thank you. You too.
So, those of us that, or those that may be watching later, it's already June 1st, which is rather shocking. Just as we thought things were getting back to normal I feel like from the pandemic, now we're having social disturbances in most of our large cities. So that's not something that we're going to discuss today, but I will say that, again, now more than ever, we've been saying this the last few months, it's important to guard our mindset and to not let negativity creep into our mindset, and that would then disallow us to continue with our business, right, and reach our goals for 2020. The reality is, and what we can control is our own schedule and our own ability to be making contacts and phone calls and having conversations with our people. Mm-hmm. And we know that interest rates are at historic lows. We know that inventory is low, and we know there's opportunities for both buyers and sellers. And that has not changed in the last couple months. So, I don't want folks to get distracted from, what we can control based on events that are happening around us, being in a pandemic or frankly a riot, unfortunately. So that's kind of my intro. Today we're going to be talking about the complete transaction checklist, and we have a couple that put together kind of come up with with an entire checklist. And I would go a step further and say that if people missed out on our amazing sphere of influence session that we did, I think it was 2 weeks ago now. I was going to say it was last week, but we weren't on last week. It was Memorial Day last week. So I think it was a couple Mondays ago. Mm-hmm. We flew through it. Probably could have been 2 days. We crammed it into one, right? But there's a sphere of influence calendar, and there's a sphere of influence almost like a checklist of who gets what and when.
Yep.
So if you came on today looking for checklists, I wouldn't discount that, right? Go back and look for that. The listings checklist that I'll go ahead and share now.
Charlie, I want to say something about what we mean, because it just occurred to me because of the example you gave of the sphere of influence marketing and touch plan checklist. Anything you're going to do more than once in your business just needs a protocol written down that you can use over and over. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about committing to repeatable processes that will save you time and up the value of your service.
Right, exactly. So we have a checklist for listings. This takes you all the way from pre-listing all the way to post-closing.
Yes.
This particular one is about 4 pages. We've discussed it before. We're not going to go through it today, but this is available at theallegianceway.com. Click on Daily Dose. If it's not there yet, it'll be there by 5 today. And then you have one, same thing. It will be there by 5 o'clock today. So we just wanted to kind of mention them, reference them, and then talk about almost how to use them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So do you want me to show mine or not? I guess it's not necessary. I have a complete buyer checklist as well. So we're providing to you a complete listing checklist and a complete buyer checklist, but there are others, right? You need an open house checklist. If you're not getting it now, these times are set aside, but in normal times, if you're not getting a closable lead out of every single open house, then you're probably doing not enough to generate the leads and the engagement that you could. Start working on a repeatable process that you can improve over time. Your listing marketing checklist, right? You need to be able to say, I always do this, I always do this. So whatever system, whatever action you will do over and over and over, have a repeating protocol and a checklist for it. So Charlie, you were transitioning to, how do we use these? How do we make them vital?
Well, and I wanted to remind everybody that GTS, what's that stand for? Google that stuff, I'll say, right? Other people say something else. So if you say, I need an open house checklist and there's not one on the Allegiance Way, first, if there's something that you need, I'd love to hear from you and say, hey, I need this, right? It'd be great to have this. I won't be able to create it overnight, right? But in the meantime, you can probably get one on your own from the MLS, from the local board, just from Googling. If you need ideas for your listing presentation, Google is an amazing thing, right? So love to have your suggestions. right? But be resourceful in finding the sources of information that you need at the same time. So I want you to lean on us, but the Allegiance Way is ever evolving and growing, but not everything that you need is in there yet, right? It's still kind of in its infancy. We just started it this year.
But I think you're bringing up something extremely valuable. And as often happens on this show, I realize I want to talk about something that we didn't plan for.
Right.
There are almost unlimited checklists, guys. Those of you who think you'd give up your nice new car if only you had a complete transaction checklist are kidding yourselves. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful, because I am you. The interesting thing is, when you come upon that successful agent, that really, really locked and in, I don't know what the term I'm looking for, they're just totally really on task agent.
Yep.
And you say, if only I could see how you work. If only I could peek behind the curtain,
right.
have it made, and they give you all their stuff, and then you don't open the email and you don't download the attachments. This is more about committing to the process and creating new habits for yourself than being able to see someone else's process. So I don't know how we can speak to that, Charlie, habit forming, but that's going to be a huge part of this.
Yeah. So, and my checklist is going to be slightly different than yours, which is going to be slightly different than the folks watching. And it took me a really long time to come up with a way to have a semi-customizable listing presentation, right? I was always fretting about it because we're not a traditional company in the sense that everybody markets the same way, right? A Remax company is very independent. The agents are very independent. We all know this. So I kept scratching my head saying, what can I create for them that's going to work? And then we came up with the semi-customizable piece. So, maybe over time we'll come up with these semi-customizable or customizable checklists to where you're not downloading a checklist, you're actually downloading an editable copy.
Yes.
So, that's something that we'll work on. But I don't want anybody to wait to get a checklist in their hands, because whatever you get, you're going to want to change anyway.
Yeah.
And I would just encourage you that, as you're doing things, just jot down what you're doing. And if you do that for your next couple deals, surprise, you're actually going to have a checklist, when you're done with that. And I talked about last week that I had been getting a lot of Tom Ferry clients, right? I was scared to death of missing out on different pieces because I didn't have a checklist for that, right? I didn't usually get that many new clients within 2 weeks. Just like there's agents out there that don't normally get 3 listings in 2 weeks, and when you do, it is can be stressful. Mm-hmm. Well, literally the night after you and I had that conversation, I had a checklist. It's just written down right now, right? But one exists, right? So I solved the problem. So those of you that have been fretting for years about not having one, just create one as you go, right? And at least you're going to have 90% is better than 0%, right? And these checklists are always, always evolving. They're these living documents. So I don't know that anybody is ever 100% done, because you go to a conference, you watch a webinar, you're like, wait a minute, that's an amazing thing that agent's doing. I need to add it to my checklist. So I don't want anybody to think that once these things are done, that they're set in concrete and they're never to be changed again, right? Sure. So I would just, if you've been procrastinating, there's no better time to start than now. And, again, there's no judgment here, right? No. Amy just said, I'm you. And I just gave you an example how I've been a coach for going on 4 years. I did not have an onboarding checklist. Shame on me. I was running that part of my business by memory.
Sure.
And then when I got 8 new clients in 21 days or whatever, my memory was failing. It was like, sure. I don't know if I did that for that particular person. And none of this is particularly intellectually demanding. It's just 8 steps for each person. But if you forget to add them to your calendar, you're not a great coach if you don't show up to the next call, right? That's just one simple example. But if you don't have a checklist, it's easy to screw up. So,
well, and I think, we could apply the expression highest and best use.
Yes.
To our memory.
Yep.
And I've never heard anybody do that before, but we talk about highest and best use of our time.
Right.
Those of you who are shaming yourself that you're too old or you're too whatever, it's an excuse. It's not old age, it's overwhelm. And your brain was never meant to store that many items on a checklist. Yep. So highest and best use of your brain is negotiating, strategizing, winning people over, right? Building rapport, listening to people's needs. The checklist is where everything else needs to go. And Charlie, I will tell you, my career began with a simple printed buyer checklist and listing checklist that was stapled to the outside of the folder, and it was a lifesaver. Those of you who are still using paper folders, hey, I'm not going to shame you for that. they're visual, they're present, they're right there on the desk. You probably do have one of those check it off on the front. Those of you who don't, not a bad place to start. But I don't know, Charlie, are you interested in talking about other ways of doing this? What could be the electronic?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I agree. I heard somebody speak last week, and this person was basically saying, what's the point if you don't go from no checklist to an electronic checklist? And I'm thinking, if you go from no checklist to paper, that is a huge leap.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fantastic. If you're using paper and you're a big team, let's go electronic,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if there's a pandemic, you don't all have to run to the office and pick up the paper files to know where you are as a team, right? Yeah. So I do think we talk a lot about progress, not perfection. And I know that any progress when it comes to these big projects is a win. And like I was saying a minute ago, it's never going to be done.
Mm-hmm.
It's never going to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of agents are okay with that, right? If you're super analytical and you get all wrapped up in that, you just got to breathe and know that that's just kind of the nature of this business. We're always learning something new, and we're always wanting to add to our checklist or take something out. Or, there's a lot of listing agents that probably didn't have 3D Matterport in their checklist. I hope that's changed in the last, 75 days?
Sure.
I hope, maybe not, but, so we're always having to pivot and learn new things. And so I like the idea of there's different ways to do this. There's different programs to use when it comes to checklists in general. And some are built for real estate and others are built for any sort of business.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really care what they use as long as they're using something. And if that is the piece of paper stapled to the folder and that works for them, that's cool.
Right.
And over time, challenge yourself to transition to something electronic. So if you're not at the office, you don't have to worry about it. Yeah.
I was kind of surprised, Charlie. I was on a coaching call early this morning, and this agent was talking about her lack of systems, and we were talking about Trello and Asana and CRM and all these things, and finally got around, like, believe it or not, I had failed somehow to ask her where she stores her documents. Like, and her answer was zip forms. And I'm thinking, you're not understanding the question.
Right.
Like random things you've written in your lifetime, the title to your car. Yep. I don't know, like, where's all this? She's like, oh, on my computer. I'm like, so
okay. So talk to us about, because I think there's a lot of people, whether they're watching or not, they store a lot of this stuff on the hard drive of their computer.
That's where hers was.
And this agent that I was listening to on Friday was describing that she was at a club with her husband celebrating a 50th birthday, and her car was broken into, and they stole her laptop. And at first she was fretting, but then she thought, this sucks, right? Let's not minimize, right? It sucks if you walk out and your car's been broken into. But all of her important documents are all in the cloud. Yeah. So she went home, got on her desktop, she had her stuff. Nothing of importance was actually stored on the computer.
Yep.
Because of the threat of flood, theft, fire, all of the above, right? Having to, run to an appointment and then you don't have it. So kind of segueing into this, I'm a big proponent of using Google. It's free, which is perhaps one of the reasons, and you get lots of storage space. I still have the free version, I think, and I'm not out of storage space yet. I use iCloud for my photos and stuff. So I'm a Mac user. I use iCloud for all that stuff, but I use Google Docs. All of our company's stuff is on Google Docs. And I get some of the staff would tell you that I get very frustrated when somebody sends me something that is a PDF or a Word document, because I tell them immediately when you send it, it's obsolete. Right? Then if I make a change to it, it's okay. What version are we all using? Right?
Sure.
There's nothing in the cloud.
Sure.
So those of you that don't have a Google account, you'd be amazed at what you can store there, and you can collaborate with people, send it for their thoughts. They can, you could work on one document with multiple people sitting in multiple states at the same time.
Yep.
And so Google is one example, and you probably have things to add to that kind of, Google idea?
Well, I think it's bare bones. So
Yes.
I do have Google Drive. I also have the whole Word suite. I
Okay.
also pay for Dropbox.
Yeah.
But I'm a hoarder of real estate resources.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a coach, I'm a trainer.
Yep.
I pay for a Dropbox and I pay for a very large Google storage.
Okay.
I have both. The thing that so Dropbox though is static, right? I stick a document in there and it sits there.
Yep.
I have a document in Google, whether I'm writing on it or not, it's alive, like you said, Charlie. And if I walk away because I, left the oven on, I can pick it up on my laptop and the document is still there and everything is saved.
So somebody's asking Google Docs versus Dropbox.
Right.
Can you go a little deeper there?
Dropbox is like an electronic filing cabinet.
Yep.
Whereas Google Docs is an electronic filing cabinet with immediate editing capabilities.
Right.
I can edit it in the filing cabinet if you want to use that analogy. And Steve, I use both. I absolutely use both. And I think it's just because I started with Dropbox and graduated. And I don't know, I guess I could look at transitioning, but right now I like the storage capability of Dropbox as well.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never been a big Dropbox user. Sometimes you have to use it when somebody sends you something via DocBox, right? Mm-hmm. That's the extent of my use. But no, I think that your explanation is good. And again, a lot of these resources have at least free versions, and you can go in and kind of play around with it. Yep. So I wouldn't get too caught up. But if you like to collaborate and do a lot of updating of documents and whatnot, then Google is the way to go. And you can send out links and make them private and public and all sorts of different things. And that's how we tend to share documents within our company. I think I have some people that still don't really get it. So it's a work in progress for everyone, right? Whether you're a staff member or just an average Joe walking down the street when it comes to technology. But we're always striving to get better. And I like the idea that there's a Google Drive app on your phone, so you can pull it up on your phone. I get a lot of call sheets that get filled out every week. I probably get more than 50 call sheets per week between the people that I coach in group and the people that I coach individually. And I can go on to my phone and see what their answers are, right? A lot of people don't get them in 24 hours in advance, right? Sometimes it's just, very late at night. So if I'm up in the morning before I get out of bed, I can see that I have a new sheet that's been updated and look and see what they said, right? Without needing my laptop or even an iPad. So,
all this is to say, once you have those items on your checklist, once you've gotten ideas from someone else, whatever, where will those items live?
Right.
And if they're not stapled to the outside of the folder, are they in a folder in an electronic version, right? In your Dropbox, in your Google Drive. And then how will you remember to access it when it's time?
Right.
You get that come list me call, right? You're going to have to develop the habit of checking the list. And I don't know, maybe you commit this week. Say, I will spend no less than an hour editing the list that Amy and Charlie gave me. And I will promise that next week I will look at it once every single day so it starts to become part of my memory. You have to create the habit of checking the system you have, right? I transferred my listing checklist, which is the one that you have, to Trello, and that's where it lives. So I get a new listing, I go into Trello, I open it up, I pull the master, I write the new address on there, and I just start marching along with a new card for my new listing.
So Trello, TRELLO.com, right?
Yep.
This is very similar to Asana, ASANA.com.
Yep.
Both have free versions. Trello has a free version.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, okay, both have free versions. This is a place to keep your almost updated files per transaction if you want, right? This is where we're going with this. So TRELLO, Trello.com or Asana.com.
I can show if you want me to share and
Sure.
share.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. This is a very, very visual tool, Trello is. It's not the only one. Remember, we're giving you an example. Trello is organized in boards, and you can see I have a lot in here because I've had coaching clients share theirs with me. But the ones at the top are all of mine. This one called Current Listings Master Template Board. This is the one. And so you can see that this has a left to right functionality. On the far left are my templates. I open up the master template, and you can see everything from pre-listing to post-closing is here.
Right.
I'm never going to forget anything. So I open up the master. I make a copy,
Mm-hmm.
I write in the address, and move right along. Here we have one with the picture already done. 333. It's a condo. That's the address. This is fake, as you can tell.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see we've got part of it checked off.
Yep.
We've linked the transaction spreadsheet to it, and then we march it along until everything is closed. Right? You can keep track of every single thing that you have in a very visual way. So I'm a huge fan of Trello, but I also have a board for my marketing to my top 50 people in my sphere of influence.
Mm-hmm.
I have a client events board. All of these help me. And we have a big client event. We have lessons learned. We update the vendor list. We say next time we're definitely going to do such and such differently. All the ideas that I have get to live here, and they're there when I need them. I am also a notepad girl. I love to write things down, but guess what? I'm going to lose this.
Right.
Trello, I'm not going to lose.
Yep. Yeah, I was trying to get into the habit, and I actually did a pretty good job. What was the last big event that we went to? It was probably the Elite Retreat or R4, of using my iPad to take my notes. I insisted, right? I'm not going to drag around this notepad anymore. It's something that I wanted to try. And I have a little pencil for the iPad. It actually worked out pretty well. When I went to convert it to type, it struggled a little bit with my handwriting.
Huh.
But overall, still, it's just so much better than dragging around a notebook and realizing that I left the notebook at the office, or I happen to be in Florida right now. The notebook's in DC, right? That's very unhelpful and gets very stressful. Where, if I had everything in my iPad and Google, then you don't. First of all, you're dragging around a lot less weight. Yep. And then you're not trying to figure out, what notebook was it in, yes. This and that. I remember I used to take notes on, gosh, this goes back 15 years. I would have notebooks at the office. Mm-hmm. And this was when I was a managing broker, and we were like insanely busy. This one office was doing $1 billion a year in volume. And I was just on the phone all day. But if there were a big problem, you'd have to go back and try to figure out, okay, that person that complained, now they want to file a lawsuit. What were my notes on that? And I had the dates on each notebook. You'd be like, okay, so that one was probably 4 notebooks ago. You'd have to flip through and try to find. I mean, it's just a nightmare. And this was before Trello. This was before Asana. This was before Google Docs, right? But I think there's still some people that are operating that way.
Yeah.
And it creates more stress, right? We're in that habit. And we feel like it's like this stress-free habit, but then when you need to find something and you can't, we've all been there, it gets really, really stressful. And, then it turns into a time suck, and, you just get annoyed, or at least I do.
I so agree with you. And I think you're making a great note about work on the fly. So those of you who have not tried some of the apps, all of these do have app versions. The Trello app is actually incredible. And I hate using my phone for work.
Yeah.
It's my eyes. I would rather have an actual computer monitor. I will drive to my office before I sit and surf on my phone. However, the Trello app is fantastic. It really, really functions well. But I am also an Evernote user. So if note taking is important to you, Evernote is easy to take notes in, audio, video, visual. You can snap pictures of things. You can record things.
Right.
You can type in it, and it's imminently searchable, just easy peasy. And I'm not saying use that to run your business, but just as a note-taking thing, it's note-taking on.
So you get a Southern Living magazine, and there's this amazing recipe. I get Southern Living, and I don't cook, but these recipes are like amazing, especially their desserts, right? There's pies and cakes. And so an example, you could take a picture of that recipe, put it in Evernote, and it would always be there, instead of you tearing out the recipe, you putting it in a cookbook somewhere or up in a shelf, and you're like, where's that recipe? I want to make that pie or bake that cake, and then you can't find it. So again, all of these, everything that we've mentioned today has a free version.
Yes.
And just give it a shot. I think, certainly there are YouTube videos and tutorials and previews of what all these different products do. So I don't think anyone's saying, you need to try them all out. Pick one, play around with it, see if you like it. Mm-hmm. And we use Manifestly within our company for checklists, and it's actually a pretty robust system. It's not pretty though. There are no photos and stuff, but you can have links and all this and that. And so that's another one. Real estate specific though, right? Switching gears a little bit. like a paperless pipeline, we use that for transaction management. So we have a transaction management program within the company. We have people that will manage transactions for our associates, and we use paperless pipeline for that. It's fairly inexpensive, and it allows you to have, the checklist and then all the details on that deal all in one place.
Yeah.
And you put in the due dates of contingencies and whatnot, and it warns you, that it's coming up, and everyone's on the same page, right? The agent, the transaction manager, everyone's on the same page. And again, so I just have there's a team that I coach in rural Northern Virginia, I'll say, and they're going to sell probably 300 homes this year. And one of the issues with this team was when the pandemic hit, they weren't going to the office anymore. Well, all the files were at the office, and they didn't know where in each file they were within the checklist.
Yeah.
So, they went as far as having a checklist, great, but then it's like, oh my gosh, we're not at the office. What do we do? So they transitioned to paperless pipeline. This is just within the last few weeks, and it's working, fairly well for them. And you pay per transaction. It's not expensive. If you do fewer than 10, it's this amount. If you do fewer than 25, it's this amount, and so on and so forth. But there's a lot of people that use it, and you get a free trial. And again, there's all of these resources. Don't just rely on the demos that you see on their sites. You can also go to the number 2 search platform in the world, which is YouTube. Type in Trello, see what comes up, watch a couple videos, see if you like it, or paperless pipeline, or some of these other systems before you make a decision and to move forward. So what I don't want to do is give everybody 10 choices and people get, feeling overwhelmed.
Sure.
But if you're used to paper, just pick one, try it. I feel like we've segmented out specifically, document management in general, Google and Dropbox. I'm kind of summarizing now. We've only got a couple of minutes left.
Well, but I want to make a point to something you said that I think is super valuable. There are transaction software out there. Paperless pipeline is to manage a transaction. RealVolve has that built in. Rivety has that built in. There is some of that in Follow Up Boss. Your CRM may have some transaction management in it. The thing that none of those have I seen, and maybe they're imminently editable. Those of you who are paying for a really expensive CRM, feel free to jump in and type in the chat. But for me, it doesn't say email them and remind them to change their to have their mail forwarded. It doesn't say that in paperless pipeline, right? It says this is the inspection objection, correct? So my buyer and listing checklists are extremely long.
Right.
All the little things that I would have otherwise forgotten to do, like send them a handwritten note, right? Confirm such and such with so-and-so. So for me, having another place for that workflow, and for me, it's a workflow to live, is absolutely vital. And to your point, Charlie, about how you don't have to invest in these, you can try them. Almost all of them are free, the ones that we mentioned. Trello is free. Evernote is free. Google is free, all right? When you get to the point where you need to pay anything, that's going to be pretty far down the road. So I will tell you, I started with Trello years and years and years ago, and I was playing. It's a heck of a fun place to plan a vacation. You can do anything in Trello. You want to have a dreaming space that doesn't disappear when you log out? Set up a free Trello account and play. If you choose to use it for other purposes, it's there.
Got it. Good. Tomorrow, your online presence.
Woohoo!
So we were on today, we're on tomorrow, we will be on Friday. Amy and I have a training class that we will be taking virtually on Wednesday and Thursday. So we're going to take a break Wednesday and Thursday, but we'll see you back here 1:30 Eastern tomorrow for your online presence. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Bye.